Good morning and welcome to the last day of the summit. For the first session this morning, I would like to invite Mrs. Joanie Friedman from the University of Chicago, and she will have invited talk on Civic Actor Studio at the University of Chicago as a social innovation for inclusive communities. We are looking forward to your presentation, Ms. Friedman.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm Joanie Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of Civic Leadership in the Office of Civic Engagement at the University of Chicago. And I cannot be more excited to share with you the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years with something called the Civic Actor Studio. When I think about the word civic actor, I think of someone who's doing civic action. So that might be an nonprofit leader or a government leader or someone who is an artist or an activist, a journalist, a philanthropist. Really, many of the people who are at this conference, I think of you as civic actors as well. And we think of a studio as a place where people can come and try new things and experiment. And so the Civic Actor Studio is this really unique leadership development program that's distinctive in 2 particular ways. One is that we invite in as a new type of student the kinds of people throughout the south side of Chicago and really the whole Chicagoland area who are actively trying to make Chicago a better place. And those are what we consider the civic actors. And those are the people with whom we want to have more partnerships, relationships, trust, develop. The second thing that makes it very distinctive is that we use classic theater, and not the watching of theater, but the doing of theater in service of leadership development. So I'm going to walk you through this presentation and try to give you a little sense about the magic that happens through this process. We have found it to be exceed our wildest expectations. And I really want to emphasize that if anyone is interested in this work, we will have time at the end for more questions. And I'm also willing to meet with you one-on-one and continue the conversation with your university if you're thinking about something similar to this. So this is going to be just a quick video that will share what the Civic Actor Studio is from the voice of the participants themselves.
Oftentimes, those of us that serve as leaders, we are always in positions where we're pouring into other people, but we rarely have those opportunities where someone is pouring into us.
The Civic Actor Studio is a really special space because it is dedicated and it is intentional for the civic leaders, the people in our community who are trying to make our neighborhoods better places. This is a place for them.
The point of Civic Actor Studio is that it's a space of reflection and contemplation and growth where folks who are helpers really have an opportunity to spend time nourishing themselves. It's an opportunity to couple reflection with the action of revolution.
We all have characters inside of us that we ignore, and the theater space created an opportunity for us as civic actors, as civic participants, to rediscover those characters and learn how to use them effectively.
Just in Chicago in general, but especially on the South Side, we work in silos. And we don't see the commonality of the work that we do and how it can increase and support each other, the work that needs to be done and move it forward, and that we can do more work together than we do apart.
Being a part of the Civic Actor Studio is being extremely aware of who I am putting out there on stage in this meeting, what character is out there.
What's thrilling is we can bring some of those characters from Greek classic texts or an August Wilson play or a Tennessee Williams, and in the private, safe environs of civic actors rehearsal space, you can practice being Oedipus, Oedipus Rex, to see if that character is one that is authentic to you and that resonates based on the classic text and your personal life.
Even if you are bringing all of yourself and you're doing great work, you will still discover things that are important in the studio. And that discovery will make you an even stronger leader.
So that gives you a little bit of a taste, but I'm sure you're still wondering, well, what is the Civic Actor Studio and how does it all work and what makes it distinctive? So one way that I like to start any Civic Actor Studio is asking the people in the room, so think to yourselves, what are the many audiences that you yourself are in front of on a day-to-day basis, both personally and professionally? And people often talk about, well, I interact with other staff members, other peers, and sometimes students, sometimes teachers. Many times nonprofit leaders work with their board. And we think about how we all have many characters that are authentic to who we are. I give the example that I'm the mother of 3 children, a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And the version of myself I bring forward for my 16-year-old is very different than the version of myself I bring forward for my 6-year-old, but they're both authentic to who I am. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. The same lens we use in the Civic Actor Studio is we invite civic actors to think about the many audiences where they interact and the many aspects of themselves that they might have access to. We believe deeply that people have multitudes. We're more like an onion than we are like an avocado. We have layers to ourselves, and that the work of the Civic Actor Studio is to invite individuals to discover and rehearse parts of themselves so that they can be more powerful and continue to benefit their communities. These are already people who have a large following, who can be teachers, educators, activists, journalists, as I mentioned. They are the people who the community looks to, and they're often pouring into others without having a space to rehearse and practice the many parts of themselves. I know that I'll probably be preaching to the choir here that we know universities cannot address complex urban challenges all by themselves, and that the relationships that are formed with surrounding local leaders are incredibly important. And one thing that makes this distinctive is that instead of having a meeting that's geared toward a particular goal or a particular thing you're trying to accomplish in the moment, this is an experience that is designed to create more trust between individuals and among groups of people on the south side of Chicago. And that trust then leads to relationships that can turn to partnerships and collaborations. So what is it? What are the ingredients of the Civic Actor Studio? Each one, so we've now done 5. We have over 100 people who've come through the experience. And each one is limited to 20 civic actors. We have 4 trained facilitators, and the facilitators often come from the people who have already participated in the previous cohort. We have 3 months of programming that begins with an intensive 4-day retreat. And this is really important because people often say, well, there's no way I could leave my job and actually have 4 full days to dedicate to something. But when they do, they find that it provides a space for reflection, for growth, for community, and it's so powerful that they don't want to leave by the end of the 4th day. I can assure you that. We also use at least 2 texts. We like to work with the ancient classic of Antigone and look at 4 different archetypes that are in that text. And we've also used Sandra Cisneros' text 11. But we are always iterating and creating more spaces. We then bring the whole group back to Court Theater for a performance. And overall, it turns into about 35 hours of self-reflection, community dialogue, and community creation. You may have heard this so far, but just to reiterate, what we think is really special about the Civic Actor Studio is that it's a new way to think about leadership. we're not the group that's saying, here are the 7 effective ways to be a great community leader. And if you just study them, you can become. Rather, we employ a metaphor where we think of our lives as being a series of scenes, and each scene has a very specific audience. And on our stage, we have certain characters that come downstage, which means they're closest to the audience. Those characters are ones that people, they work for you, and many people identify you with that. So for example, I have an enthusiastic character. She loves to come downstage and share what she loves. We also have characters that are upstage that we sometimes access, but not often. We have characters that are on the sides so that maybe other people see in us, but we don't see in ourselves. And we have some hidden characters that are off stage. And by slowing down and creating luxurious space together, we invite individuals to think about, how do they usually set their stage? What character do they bring forward? And what we find is that when people slow down and think about it, they start to question if there are certain characters that they have access to in one realm of their life that they've never thought to bring forward in another realm of their life. And if they did, what would happen? And so the Civic Actor Studio invites individuals to create scenes from their own lives and to rehearse them in a very safe communal community of care, is what we like to say. The things we hope to get out of the Civic Actor Studio are not limited, but include an increased self-awareness of our own multiplicity, how many multiple characters we have when we're leading, an expanded capacity to think differently, a reinforced sense of purpose, perspective, and poise. And this one comes back over and over again. For example, one of our civic actors described the situation where she was 3 weeks away from turning in her resignation letter. She was frustrated with her board. She was frustrated with the civic work. She came to the Civic Actor Studio and recognized why she cared about the work, what was important to her, what ways she was showing up to the situations that were difficult for her, and how she had more agency to change how she shows up in those situations. And after the Civic Actor Studio, she had an incredibly renewed sense of purpose and is now expanding her program to 3 new cities in the United States. So when you hear testimonies like that, you think, gosh, we're really onto something. What's going on here? These are just a couple of testimonials. Again, this is Jarima Gorman. She's an executive director of a local nonprofit that's around literacy. And she describes how this is a place that encourages you to bring your full self into the space. We also have Joseph Williams, who runs a program for fathers in Chicago. And he had none of these individuals identify as being actors necessarily, theater actors. This is designed for people doing civic action, but it lets them get a taste of the magic that's created when a group of people are in a rehearsal space. As I mentioned, there's been over 100 civic leaders who've participated. There are new collaborations that have been created. For example, 2 participants met each other in the first cohort, and because of that interaction and many more in between, one of them is chairing the Capitol campaign to be able to bring a new Black dance center. And one thing that we find really and just rewarding is that 100% of the people say they'd recommend the Civic Actor Studio to a friend or colleague. In fact, we advertise this through nominations. Someone who's come through it before can nominate someone for the experience. And we have a huge waiting list of over 180 people already before we've even gotten the nominations from this most recent cohort. So it's very popular. Our hope is that by 2032, would be able to have engaged 1,000 Southside leaders and change makers, and to have equipped 120 community and civic facilitators with the tools to lead these civic actor studios locally, nationally, and globally, which is why I'm so excited to be at this conference and share with you our vision. As I mentioned, we have many ways you can get involved. If you have the capacity and the interest, you are welcome to fly to Chicago and experience it yourself. You can also share the concept with your administration and ask that we do a presentation virtually or in person. And at one point in time, we would also be willing to come out and do a 4-day studio for other universities and their surrounding community leaders, so that you can get a taste of it in your own space. And so as we head into the more interactive part of this presentation, I want to ask you 2 questions, and feel free to ask me others, but I'm curious if there are elements of the Civic Actor Studio or the approach that we use through the doing of theater that are similar to activities that your institution is already doing. I'd love to learn. And secondly, are the goals and methods of the Civic Actor Studio, might there be some that you would like to use or adapt in your own work? I'll just kind of close by saying that we looked at what was distinctive about the city of Chicago and the University of Chicago. We have a very rich theater culture here. There are over 200 professional theater companies in Chicago, and one of them is housed here at the University of Chicago. And so we saw what was unique about what we do, and we recognized a need to build genuine relationships with our immediate surrounding community leaders. And this is a distinctive approach because people, when they do this work together, they get quite vulnerable. And when they're vulnerable and they support one another, they grow to trust each other so quickly that many people end up calling this a trust accelerator. So I'm delighted to be able to be part of the co-creation and the continuation of the Civic Actor Studio. And I welcome any and all questions you have about how it works, how it might be useful to you, and any other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. I was really interested. I'm the first one that will contact you. So I want to ask the audience, if they have a question, please type it for us in the chat that we can talk to her and ask her specific questions. But I've got a question. What was your biggest challenges that you experienced to roll out this magnificent program?
Oh, thank you. I will say that the rolling out of it was not that challenging in some ways. I mean, everything is challenge, everything is work, but the backstory is that I had helped kind of generate and produce a separate program called the Civic Leadership Academy. That is a 6-month program at the University of Chicago for nonprofit and government leaders. And when I ran that for 5-6 years, we kept asking people what was most impactful. And they said 2 things. The first was a global practicum where we took all 30 Chicago leaders to South Africa the first year, and we went to Delhi, India the next few years, and now they go to Paris, because that shook up the way that they thought and let them see Chicago with fresh eyes. The second thing they said that really stuck with them as being quite impactful was this 3-hour workshop, which was led by Harry Davis at the Booth School of Business, who's in this picture, and Charlie Newell, the artistic director of Court Theater. And they just brought on a new person named Gabby Randall Bent, who's also featured here. And everybody said this metaphor for theater as a way to bring forth more of yourself in the service of your work and your passion was so helpful for the 5 minutes before they had to walk into a meeting, or the 3 minutes before they're preparing to go on stage, or whatever the moment was, whether it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 500. And we heard that people said the ability to become more intentional about what energy, what aspect of yourself you do want to bring forward was the thing that everyone loved. So I approached both of all 3 of those other co-founders, Harry, Charlie, and Gabby, and I said, if this is so powerful in 3 hours, what would a 4-day experience look like? And that's where we started. And we were able to pilot the program because there's a spirit of experimentation and let's try it, let's get things going. And we have deep, powerful, positive relationships with civic leaders on the South Side of Chicago. So I've been at the university 16 years, and over that time, I've met many people through the work that we've been doing in the Office of Civic Engagement. And so the combination of the theater practice with the leadership lens out of the Booth School of Business and our relationships really blew us out of the water. After the first cohort that we did, a woman who was a dancer decided to choreograph an original ballet based on our 4 days together. So it just happened beautifully. But to answer your question, then the pandemic hit, and we were stumped to figure out how could we replicate this very intensive in-person experience in some kind of a hybrid model. And so we tried that with the second cohort and learned that it's very difficult. Lots of good could come out of it, but it wasn't the same as being in the room with one another. And so for cohorts 3, 4, and 5 and beyond, we've made the decision that we are going to only do this in person and not have it be a virtual experience.
I've got an online question. Thank you for the answer. And the online question is the same as my next question. And I'm reading Kay Lambrecht. Kay said, how is it possible to secure funding to run this meaningful program? Is it from the institution or private funding?
Great question. At the beginning, we needed to pilot it, and it was entirely done with university resources. But after we did that, 2 private foundations have seen the value of the work and have helped fund future iterations. So the Chicago Community Trust, which is a magnificent organization that cares a lot about civic leadership in Chicago, and the Seabury Foundation, which is also a leader in arts and arts education. So we found the individuals who many of them came through the experience themselves and would say before they didn't think such a thing was needed, but after they've been through the experience, they think this is the thing that one day, maybe in 20 or 50 years from now, might create the network of leaders who themselves could go on to win a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, this forming of networks and the generation of goodwill and trust is remarkable. It surprises me every time how quickly the Trust Accelerator really works.
I also want to ask a question with regard to students. How many do you have students involved, and how many students do you get involved in this program?
That's a great question. I like to answer it in a funny way, to say that in a way, this is a way to reframe civic leaders as a new kind of student for the University of Chicago. So we're not working with undergrads or graduate students. We're working with people who have no time to slow down and reflect and kind of get quiet and think about Antigone. They're just putting out fires and doing the work and trying to make Chicago a better place day in, day out from their many different roles. And I think that universities have an opportunity and perhaps even a strategic desire to include these types of people as students and design experiences that are welcoming, that are meant not to, you don't have to have any prior experience with theater to do this. It's designed to be a place where people get to know each other And not only is the process we go through really valuable for each individual, but I would say they get to know each other in a way that maybe they've seen each other 100 times before, but have never learned about what motivates them to do the work and what are the different, it's a very humanizing process.
If I can ask, what do you think is your limitations of this program? If you think this is now my limitation, okay, I perhaps don't have undergrad or students involved, or is there anything else that you say is my limitation of this specific program that you would change if you can?
Well, if I could get more funding to be able to grow the program and reach more people more quickly, I think that's the biggest limitation. We need, we've served 100 people. From that 100 people, over 15 or 20 have, come back as facilitators. Many of them have then created similar or inspired programs with youth in the city. And I could see a ripple effect happening if we could scale up and reach more than 40 people every year. Then we could get to our goal of reaching 1,000 people. So I think money is our limitation. I also think it would be interesting to ask yourself, or each person in this conference, if you had a magic wand and you could build trust among a disparate group of 20 individuals, who would you most want to pick for that cohort? And it is often a mixture of staff and faculty and civic leaders, philanthropists, journalists, many different types that are all caring about the health of our city. That's what they have in common, and particularly a love of the South Side of Chicago. But I would love to experiment with what it might look like across different disciplines, different faculty, staff, students. Thinking about the composition of the cohort is really like a curation of a beautiful bouquet of flowers. You want to have a little bit of many different parts, because the learning comes from seeing similarities across what seem to be lines of difference.
Okay, I'm situated in South Africa and I'm very interested, but I definitely don't have the funding to come. And I embarked a lot on e-community work or e-service learning the last few years. Do you think it's possible that we can connect with the whole full program online, or do you think it's only the introduction that you suggested that we can do, like our introduction on your program? Or do you think it's possible to go fully online with one country to another country with the program?
Great question. We are actually considering coming to South Africa to think about a different exchange that happens with my colleague, Erica Dudley, who runs a suite of engagements through the arts and humanities, and to come both to learn what's happening in South Africa and to be able to share the types of experiences we've designed through theater, music, poetry, visual art. So you and I should talk offline to definitely dream up what is possible. But I do think we've learned that this is best done in person, but that means either you could come to Chicago or we could come to you.
Okay, I'm very impressed with the whole program, and congratulations with this. I'm looking forward to your visit to South Africa. We will definitely connect, and then I invite anyone. There's another question. How many staff was involved in organizing this from Oyama? If you can answer that for me.
So I was the main engine and driver of the program. But I had 3 great collaborators, one faculty member named Harry Davis, one artistic director, Charlie Newell, and another artistic director named Gabrielle Randall Bent. And I've had a bit of help from interns here and there, but mainly the team of 4 of us. We created a position that's called the community alchemist. It's the person who holds a group of people in a space long enough with enough warmth and one-on-one connection that the group itself gels. And we bring back for the future cohorts, the secondary cohorts, individuals who've completed the experience and want to now facilitate and or be a community alchemist. So I'd say we've created some paid positions for individuals that want to serve a particular role over those 4 days. But staff-wise, it's been mainly me and again, my colleagues who've helped co-create it every step of the way.
Mrs. Friedman, we are done with our time. So we were over with our time. So I request the questions that's all already in the chat, if they can directly ask you on the portal. That's the main thing. And I'm sure you will be willing to answer, or our contact details are there. And we say thank you very, very much for a very interesting discussion this morning. I'm sure there's a lot of us that will immediately contact you and talk to you about this. Congratulations with an excellent program. Very, very well done. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the conference. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.